Hello, everyone. Hope you're extremely well. My name is Hugo, and I work at FinMeUp. And today we are here with Rochelle. Her Twitter name, which some of you might know her, is Soul Fairy. And we're really blessed to have you here today to just share some of your knowledge. And we're looking at the company called Avenge, which is a 5-cent stock. We look at Avenge's overview. We look at their financials, their competitors and the risk, and then lastly the opinion. So there's been a lot of things going on with Avenge, and a lot of people been following it very closely. So yeah, this is for everyone that's interested in Avenge and this little penny stock. So Rochelle, kick it off for us. Who is Avenge and what do they do? Yeah.
Thanks, Higo. So Avenge was once a very powerful company listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I think in its glory days, Avenge was trading at the market value was around 8.1 billion. Okay, so Avenge is currently so the company, let's start with the history. Avenge is in the construction and engineering sector of the market. They have operations in South Africa and Australia. They have some very powerful brands. If we think back, we used to use the names, Avenge, Grenica, LTA in the same breath. But Avenge did a lot of disposals over the years. They got rid of Grenica LTA. They sold a whole lot of their businesses. So the Avenge that we are currently seeing on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is not the same Avenge that was trading at 32 Rand 50 in 2014, 2015. So we need to be very careful when we are looking at a penny stock. Avenge also had stock splits. We can maybe touch on that when we're talking about the share price, but Avenge had historical stock splits, which means if you, for instance, had 100 Avenge shares at 20 Rand a share, they do a stock split, and then all of a sudden you're sitting with 1,000 shares at 2 Rand a share. So you are not comparing apples to apples when you are looking at Avenge specifically. In terms of the management of the company, I think Avenge has a very strong management team, very strong construction and engineering backgrounds in the management team. So obviously, I'm not going to be speculating in terms of, future projects, infrastructure development, etc., tenders that Avenge could potentially win to grow the business. But I'm rather going to focus on the numbers, because numbers tell a story. Ho, you on mute, you ho.
Thank you for that. So I recently saw that there's some funds that's taking a punt on this. So the market cap is currently around 3 billion rand. So it's not the smallest of stocks, even
No?
though it is 5 cents a share. But I saw a company. You can help me if I'm wrong. I don't follow Avenge too closely, but the JP Morgan invest in them.
I'm actually not sure about that. I saw something on the timeline. I'm also not, a disclaimer, I'm not an investor in Avenge, so I don't follow them very closely. But I did look at the financial statements recently on my timeline. What I do every week is I help investors on how to research stocks, and they requested that we research Avenge. I do know that retail investors own around 30% of Avenge, and the rest is institutional investors, universities, etc. But I cannot comment if it's JP
Okay.
Morgan that invested
Yeah.
in Avenge.
So you say 30% of the shareholders are retail investors. What does
Private
that
in
show us? What does that show us?
So for me, what that means is I like to see more retail investors and hedge funds in a company. It speaks to the liquidity of a share. So if you go onto Easy Equities, where most of the investors that I communicate with and that I help, they are investing through Easy Equities. If you go in, and the liquidity of a share basically means how easy is it to sell the share. So if I have, let's say I have 100,000 Aveng shares and I want to get rid of them, if I bought them at 2 cents and the price goes to, let's say 5 cents, and I think I'm just gonna cash in, it's very difficult to sell an illiquid share so you can put in your order, but it won't fill. Okay, and if it fills, it's most probably going to fill at a lower price. So if you go in and you see you're buying a stock on Easy Equities and it says the maximum you can do per transaction is, let's say, 1,000 Rand. You're sitting with 10,000 Rands worth of stocks, but you can only sell 1,000 at the time, which means this stock is illiquid. They cannot put through an order unless you do it through a trading desk. Okay, and there's fees. There are fees with contacting the trading desk. So I like to look at stocks that are liquid, because if I need to sell, if the stock goes up, I want to be able to sell a stock really fast. So the less retail investors and hedge funds also often trade, whether they're shorting or longing a stock, we never know with hedge funds, whether they're going in short or long. So with shorting, they bet on the price going down, and when they go in long, they bet on the price going up. And normally they move large amounts of shares. So with Avenge, I'm a bit concerned about the liquidity, Hichal.
Cool. Let's dive into the important stuff, and that is the financials. So you had a look at their financial statements, and you really know a lot about financial statements. So what is your opinion on the financial statements of Avenge?
So Avenge specifically, okay, I normally go back 5 years when I'm looking at a company. It's very difficult to go back only 5 years on Avenge, because it tells you almost nothing, because the company has been struggling for the longest time since the 2008 recession. Avenge is really not. It attempted to recover at some point, but if you look at the stock price, you will see that it's just been struggling. So revenue. Revenue is one of the key factors that I look at. I mean, what is a business? What is any business without revenue? So Avenge's revenue has been seriously declining over the past, let's say, 10 years. I haven't seen a strong comeback in their latest financial statements. So that for me is a warning factor. Then I normally look at net profit. So I also look at gross profit. I always say to people that the lower a gross margin, the harder it is for a company to make money, because the gross margin is literally what does it cost you to make your product without the stuff like salaries and marketing costs, etc., etc. It is I'm in construction, I'm building a building. How much does it cost me to build that building? Gross profit is very important. Avenge, if I compare them to their competitors, they have the lowest gross margin of the construction and engineering companies that I looked at. I looked at Murray and Roberts. I looked at Consolidated Infrastructure Limited. So they have the lowest gross margin. And then I look at net income. So net income has been negative for the last few years on Avenge. Okay. So the income statement, there's really no positive story to tell. If I look at the balance sheet, the debt is really, really increasing compared to the cash. So when I look at the cash, I normally want to see a debt. So the equity is what shareholders puts into a company. So I want to at least see that the debt is at 50%. If the debt is higher than 50% of what the shareholders puts in, it means that we are eroding value with finance cost. Okay. So for me, that's very, very critical. And the debt has been increasing faster than what the equity has been increasing. So for me, that's also a negative factor. I am not trying to dissuade people from investing in this. I'm talking from the point of view of a long-term investor versus a speculator. If you are speculating on Avenge, I'm like, go all in. If that's what you want to do, if you're a speculator, go in. but the numbers here don't back up a long-term investor's story. Avenge is free cash flow negative, and what that means is, so they are in a cash flow statement. There's two numbers that I look at. I look at the cash from operations. So again, like I was saying with gross profit, I want to know if this company is making money before all the other stuff like buying and selling equipment, like disposing of businesses, raising debt. So the net cash from operations is negative, which means the company is not producing cash. Okay, cash is more important than you can be making losses, but you cannot be eating into cash. If so, the free cash flow is negative, and that means even after, so at operations level, so if you look at a cash flow statement, you have the first section is the operations, then it looks at investing activities and financing activities. So without complicating it, we don't look at, normally I don't look at financing activities, I don't look at investing activities, I look at the operations of a business. So Avenge is negative on that line too. So I'm really struggling here to find the good in the numbers. I think the good in Avenge is coming from the fact that it is a penny stock and that people want to go in and they want to maximize their return. If you think that Avenge is going to get back to 20 Rand a share, you are literally comparing, you're not even comparing fruits, you're not even comparing apples to oranges, you're literally comparing an apple to a fork, because it is not the same things that you are comparing. So for Avenge to return to its glory days, when everything was going right, when the company was making profits, was getting contracts, was still the business that didn't dispose of half of their assets, the share would need to return to 37 cents a share. And then it's going to be the company it used to be in the year, let's say 1999, the year 2000. The share price, the max it will go to is 37 cents. And then it means Avenge is back to its glory days if you take out the stock splits. So that's what the numbers are telling us. And numbers don't lie.
And I think, one thing that could be a bit misleading is the fact that it's 5 cents a share, sometimes 4, sometimes 6 cents a share. But, you should always look at the market cap, the valuation, because if the cent or the share price goes from 5 cents to 10 cents, that means the valuation of the company doubled. So, so many times I think we get caught up in, okay, this is only 2 cents a share. Let me buy it because it's 2 cents a share. But always look at the valuation rather than the share price. I think that's an important note. So if I look at the overview from you looking at their financials of Avenge, you are a bit cautious and it's not looking too great. So that brings us on to the next important point. What would you say are the biggest risks to Avenge, and what would you want to see for you to actually be like, this company is back on the recovery path, and maybe have a bit of a better positive view on them?
Definitely. So I have not eliminated the company completely, from a potential investment for myself. I think the risks for me, when I look at companies in the construction and engineering sector specifically, a lot of them are very, very dependent on infrastructure development. Okay, so it means they are dependent. The big money in construction and engineering is in government tenders. Okay, it is in infrastructure development across the continent, in Australia where they are. So currently, so what I would do is I look at what is the government's plans in terms of infrastructure development. I don't see massive money going into this here. If that changes in, let's say there's a massive plan from let's say the DBSA, the Development Bank of Southern Africa. If there is a massive drive by the DBSA, who is, and let's say Patricia de Lille's department is Public Works, okay, if there's massive drives from them to invest into infrastructure, and I can see the total addressable market, expanding exponentially. then I would say, Avenge is a serious player in this business. They might, they might be the one to beat in these tender rooms, and there's big money on the table. So if something like that changes in our country or in Australia, where Avenge is where Avenge is a serious player and a serious competitor, I would definitely sit up and look. Okay, that's the one thing. So that is on growth potential in terms of revenue growth. The other thing that I would really, I'm a numbers person. I cannot ignore the numbers when I invest. So when I see these numbers changing, so the one number that will change is revenue, if my first point is addressed. If Avenge can prove that they can compete on gross margin level and that they can become cash flow positive. So I understand that a lot of people would rather buy the stock now at 5 cents and take the risk. Means they have a different risk appetite to mine. And I totally respect that. But I would rather wait and see Avenge going to, I want to see the numbers change and I'll catch it on the upward trend. Okay, but the upward trend needs to be, I need to believe it is sustainable. So for me, the biggest risk right now is government is not investing into infrastructure the way I would want them to, for a construction company to benefit. And then, we cannot ignore COVID. It has had a serious impact on a lot of different sectors. So I have a lot of my research the past year has been on, how companies are going to recover from not just companies. I would look at sectors, how sectors are going to recover, and then I find companies inside that sector, and I choose the ones that I believe are the best of the best, and that would recover probably the fastest and see sustainable growth. So if I see any of those things playing out in Avenge, I would start to take notice.
Yeah, and I think it depends then on your opinion. Some people believe that government's going to increase spending on infrastructure because they need to get the economy going, and it is a great way to do so. Some people think the government won't do it. So you basically saying if you are a person that believes the government will spend on infrastructure, then Avenge might be a beneficiary of that. So getting to the conclusion, what are your final opinion on Avenge? Are you uh, maybe thinking of buying a little bit, or are you thinking of holding, or are you thinking of selling? So is Avenge stock a buy? Is this penny stock a buy? And before you get into that, for all those watching, please consider liking and subscribing. It really go a long way. So what's your final opinion?
Final opinion, Avenge is not in my portfolio. I am not intending starting a position anytime soon. If you are an investor in Avenge, you have obviously invested for different reasons than me, or why I didn't. This is not financial advice. Be very careful before you exit a position. I always tell people that it's only a loss once you sell. It's only a profit once you've locked it in. So before you do anything, before you take a position, before you sell a position, make sure that you know what you're doing and you're not going to regret it later. So I don't believe Avenge is a buy right now in its current state, in the current state of the economy. It is a firm no.
Well, there you have it. And I think, we'll probably do another video like this for those watching. So, subscribe for that. And in the next video, maybe we can discuss on your favorite shares that you own. But if you can just give us a little bit of a hint, what is one of your favorite shares that you own?
So on the JSE, I'll give you my favorite stock on the JSE and my favorite stock in my US portfolio. So on the JSE, everybody knows this that follows me. It is Sasol. Okay. I am a Sasol bull. I've been a Sasol bull for the longest time. I love the company. I love what they do. I believe in, the future of the company. I think at this price, Sasol is still undervalued. I wasn't too happy with the results that came out earlier, but they came off a very low base because 2020 was an abnormal year for oil, where oil prices went negative. So Sasol really didn't have much to compete with comparing 2021 to 2020. So let's see where it takes Sasol. In the US market, by far favorite, Amazon. Amazon is my absolute favorite stock in the US. I've got lots of growth stocks that I'm very passionate about. But the one company that I've been following for the longest time has been Amazon. I love e-commerce. I don't think we have even I don't think we've gotten to a piece of the market in terms of e-commerce. So I also like buying e-commerce companies from all over the world. I recently learned about a Turkish e-commerce company that I'm currently looking into. I haven't said anything to anybody about it yet. So this is the first word you hear. I'll give you guys the name sometime soon on the timeline if it is investable. But yeah, those are my two absolute favorite stocks in my portfolio.
Awesome. And for those watching, feel free to comment what companies you want us to talk about in our next session. There you have it. We'll look at some of our favorite growth stocks. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and your opinion on Avenge and some of your other picks. It was really great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ho. Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.